Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations joins us today. Danny Danon is calling on the world to recognize an historic opportunity in the Middle East.
Meanwhile, the IDF is striking back at Houthi rebels in Yemen after they fired another missile at Israel. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has that story.
Israel hit the rebel regime in Yemen early Thursday after the Houthis launched another missile at Israel, one of several fired at the Jewish state in recent days.
The IDF conducted precise strikes on Houthi military targets in Yemen, including ports and energy infrastructures in Sana'a.
Meanwhile, Israel's prime minister is set to huddle today with top officials on a hostage deal that may be fast approaching. It may include a 6-week ceasefire in exchange for Hamas freeing 30 of the remaining 100 hostages. In Gaza, Israel's top general said Israeli troops continue to do their part there.
We're exerting pressure on Hamas daily, driving it into greater distress to ensure the return of the 100 hostages.
The hostages came up in the United Nations Security Council Wednesday, where a hostage family member spoke directly to the council for the first time ever.
Your silence is deafening. Your inaction is suffocating.
Even a top UN official admitted what's happening to the hostages is a travesty.
I remain appalled that there are reasonable grounds to believe that hostages may be subject to ongoing sexual violence and abuse.
Highlighting Iran as the source of Mideast turmoil, top Israeli diplomat to the UN, Danny Danon, said the IDF's severe weakening of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the fall of the Assad regime in Syria presents a golden opportunity in the region.
The chance to finally end the Islamic regime of Iran's aspirations for a Shiite supremacist empire.
And Danon spoke directly to the people of Iran to rise up.
Do not miss this rare historic opportunity. Take action now. The people of Israel stand by your side.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, Ambassador Danny Danon joins us now from New York. And Ambassador, thanks so much for joining with us. I have to lead with this question, and it just seems to be an absolute double standard. A human rights organization discovered a mass grave in Syria, over 100,000 people. I mean, these numbers are just mind-boggling. And at the same time, there's nothing happening to charge al-Assad with war crimes. He clearly used chemical weapons against his own people. What's your response to this? Why are we seeing such a double standard?
Good morning, Gordon. And as you mentioned, it's a double standard. It's shameful. You know, what you described will not be even discussed at the United Nations. In a few hours, we're going to have another debate in the General Assembly against Israel, blaming us for more lies. And there will be a vote about a resolution which will call for another opinion of the International Court of Justice against Israel. So that's a circus. And in this circus, there is no place for real atrocities or for real crimes against humanity. They are obsessed with Israel. They are dealing only with us. And that's a shame, because the funds and the energy of the UN should go to the places where they have to be involved.
Well, it just seems to be an ongoing thing, and I've got to point out what ISIS was trying to do was clearly trying to wipe out minorities in Iraq. The ongoing war against the Kurds, Turkey is leading that one. You look at these other things that are happening in the same geographic space, and the UN is quiet on it, and the international courts are quiet about it. And it just seems to be an outrage to me that this kind of thing is happening. And even our own U.S. State Department, back when it was in the Obama administration, they refused to call it a genocide when it clearly was. So I've got to express my frustration. I can't imagine what it's like for Israel. How do you deal with this?
Well, you know, we are used to it, unfortunately, and we keep going. And, you know, yesterday we were blamed for attacking targets in Syria. And instead of thanking Israel Defense Forces for neutralizing the threats, and, you know, the Assad regime They had a lot of weapons that they received from Russia, from Iran, chemical weapons and other dangerous stuff. And we neutralized that threat. And instead of thanking us, they are condemning us. So, we are determined to continue to protect our borders, our people. Just last night, a missile from Yemen targeted Israel, and it hit an elementary school, actually the same elementary school which I attended 40 years ago in the city of Ramat Gan. And lucky for all of us, it was in the middle of the night and nobody was there. But imagine what could have happened if the missile would have arrived a few hours later when you had thousands of kids in the same building. So we are still fighting the proxies of Iran, and we are determined, the same way we did in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Gaza, we will do the same in Yemen if they will continue with that.
Well, I've got to point out in the wake of that attack, the U.S. State Department still won't designate the Houthis as a terror group, and they're doing that supposedly for humanitarian reasons. Again, it makes no sense to me. Let's change focus to what I consider incredible. Ireland is trying to change the definition of genocide in order to pursue charges against Israel. What are those definitional changes, and how will that affect you?
Well, Ireland, they are coming against us for years. That's why we decided to close the embassy in Dublin. We said enough is enough. We are not taking it anymore. And look what you mentioned about the genocide. It's clear that there is no genocide in Gaza. And when you look at the definition of genocide, you have to look at the intention. And everybody knows there is no intention from our side. On the contrary, we do everything we can to minimize civilian casualties. We supply thousands of trucks into Gaza every month to support the population. So they know that according to international law, it's based on this accusation. So what they are doing now, they said, let's change it. Let's change the definition so we can blame Israel for genocide. That's pure anti-Semitism. When you apply different standards against Israel, that's anti-Semitism. And that's shameful that today Ireland became, one of the main actors against Israel and against the Jewish people.
What would you tell the average American? You have a lot of supporters watching you right now. What can they do practically to help Israel today?
So first, we are grateful for the support. I receive it wherever I go from many, many Americans, and we are grateful for that. But we have to realize that we haven't finished the job. We had major successes. We have to bring back all the hostages, but we also have to deal with Iran, because otherwise they will continue with that. They will pay more money to their proxies, and they will make sure Hezbollah will be able to rebuild their capabilities. They will go back into Syria, into Jordan. So in order for us to bring peace to the region, we have to deal with Tehran. We have to deal with Iran. That will be the main challenge of the new administration. And I hope and believe that together we will be able to contain this threat and to make sure that Iran is not capable of spreading chaos anymore.
Well, I do have to point out as well, it seems like Israel is on the verge of tremendous victory, not just against Hamas. Hezbollah has been decimated. Syria is in the middle of historic change. What's the likelihood of a change in government in Iran?
So, if we would have spoken a month ago and I would tell you that there's a chance for a rebellion in Syria against Assad, you would tell me it sounds impossible because it's a cruel regime. They torture, they kill, and nobody is taking to the streets, going to the streets. Similar to the situation today in Iran. But I think there is hope. And yesterday, when I spoke in the Security Council, I actually approached the Iranian people. And I told them, we respect you. We respect your history. And now it's your turn to take action. We will be with you, but you have to take actions against the regime. And the regime spends billions on terror instead of investing it in the Iranian people. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we can see a change in Iran also.
Well, I want to sound a note of caution as well. I remember the Arab Spring. I remember the promise of democracy in the Middle East. But then Egypt elected the Muslim Brotherhood. And so I'm concerned with the groups in Syria, particularly those that are offshoots of ISIS that have pledged we're going to Jerusalem. Do you share that concern? And I assume Israel is preparing on its northern border for any anticipated threat from Syria.
Absolutely. You know, I think some of the European countries fell in love with the new forces in Syria, and they have to be careful about it. Those are bad actors. You know, when you look about their history, the connection to Al-Qaeda, to radical jihadi groups, they are not peaceful players. Maybe in the short run, you know, it will be peaceful and quiet, but I'm sure in the long run they will come against us. That's why we deployed more forces to our border on the Golan Heights. We are on high alert, and we send them a message that we will not allow them to build presence next to our border like Hezbollah did in Lebanon. But I agree with you. We should watch it very carefully, and that's why we neutralize the threat. You know, we took care of the Air Force, the Navy, and other assets that the Syrian military held, because we didn't want those rebels to have control of that weapon.
What about Europe today? I'm seeing a rise in anti-Semitism that mirrors things that happened back in the 1930s, 1940s. It's not at that same sort of fever pitch, but it looks like it's getting set up for it. Do you share that concern?
I am, and I speak with many leaders in Europe, and I explain to them it's not a threat only against the Jewish communities, and you have to protect them. It's against your own future. You know, when you see the riots in the streets of Amsterdam or the riots in the streets of London, you realize that today they come against the Jews, but tomorrow they will go against the churches and the Christians. You know, those people who came into Europe, they don't want to be part of the European civilization. They want to change that civilization, and they are doing it now. So some countries, you know, realize it fast enough and they take the right measures. But others, you know, they are naive, they don't understand what's happening, and they will pay a heavy price for that.
The marches in Germany aren't being widely reported here in the U.S., and it's of great concern to me. Has the level of immigration gotten to a point where Germany can't turn back? Are we looking at demographic shifts that essentially are inevitable?
Well, you see the demographic, you see that, you know, it impacts domestic politics in many European countries. You know, some people want the votes and they make mistakes because of that. And you see the instability. You know, look what's happening today in Germany, for example, and other democracies. And unfortunately, you know, many democracies are struggling in Europe, and Europe is not in the same place. I'm worried about the future of Europe. I think it's a problem not only for us, but also for the Europeans themselves.
Well, Ambassador, thank you for your insight, and thank you for standing strong at the UN. You have a long history of being in the battle, and you've even written a book about it. But thank you for standing strong, and thank you for
thank you for everything. Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you for joining with us. For you at home, if you weren't aware of what's happening in Germany, the mass protests are from Muslims asking for Sharia law. And what they're saying is, because Germany won't allow them to have Sharia law, they're going to take to the streets and protest. Things that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime, we're now seeing across Europe. And it's because they had open borders. And they welcomed these immigrants, not understanding, well, they aren't of your same mindset. They don't share your ideology. They don't share your love for freedom. Under Sharia law, there's no freedom of conscience. There's no freedom of assembly. There's no freedom of speech. There's no freedom of religion. And we need to really understand that in the West and exactly what we're battling.